This is KNN News with a special report. In the wake of New Zealand's historic landing on the Red Planet, protesters have taken to the streets across Scandinavia, as public outcry over the United Scandinavian Space Agency's continued failures has come to a breaking point. Many protesters have been chanting phrases like, "Our place is in space," "We won't pay for zero progress," and "You lost us the space race." Beyond all else, it shows how these citizens have lost faith in their space agency. Amid the international controversy, we've just received word that an executive meeting will be taking place at the Killington Space Centre between the director of the New Zealand Space Administration and the United Scandinavian Space Agency. There you have it, folks. After a long negotiation, it appears that the Scandinavians are willing to take a chance at throwing their support behind New Zealand's future endeavors in space, beginning with a joint mission to build a space station around Minmus. This is a truly historic moment between the two former rivals. The director of the Indian Space Research Organization has commented that India will remain vigilant in its exploration of the stars, citing that they have plans to launch a manned mission to Eve within the next 4 years, with New Zealand and Scandinavia also setting their sights on Kerbin's sister planet. Time will only tell who comes out on top. Hello there, and welcome back to Kerbal Space Program New Zealand Reborn, where we are back at our lunar colony of New Auckland, launching a brand new space station to Minmus. Yes, as the intro would suggest on all those news broadcasts. By the way, if you happen to be from any of the countries mentioned there, I do apologize for butchering your native accents, but, you know, what can you do? Anyway, we have a new tank that we have on this vessel that is the new spherical tank that we unlocked, and you can see it there with the cryogenic engines attached to the bottom there, 4 of them, because this is quite a large module we're launching. And then you can also see that Scandinavia is launching their section of the space station that's going to be attached to the bottom. And it has 2 big solar arrays and a huge centrifuge, bigger than the one that we used on the NZSA Valentina. And that allows the crew to do all sorts of actions while they're in orbit and perform the necessary experiments that they need to do. Anyway, it makes the station quite an alluring post to be stationed at if you happen to be an astronaut from one of the nations. And here we have 2 ships docking that are from both New Zealand and the USSA. A historic photograph being taken there of Bjorn Olsen and Estelle McDermott, who are 2 of the astronauts assigned to this mission, cementing the relationship between the USSA and the NZSA. Until then, until we move on to our next mission, we do have another launch of a shuttle, because, as all things go, we do need money for our space program, so launching these shuttles is our main source of revenue. We can get anywhere from 1 million to 2 million funds from a single launch of these. So we sent Oren Hayes out there to land on Minmus with some tourists, and then he actually stops at New Auckland on the Mun to refuel before heading all the way back to Kerbin. Once there, he can get the ship recovered and have all of our pilots once again available, except of course for the ones still on Duna. In the meantime, there is always more science to be gathered from the Joule system, and if you remember, our Lathe lander and our Tylo lander were pretty unsuccessful the last time that we tried to launch a mission to those 2 planets. So we are trying once again with Tumuaki 5. Well, it looks like the Tylo lander could have gone better. That planet really is a pain to land on because of its gravity just being so high, and there's no atmosphere to slow you down, so you can't use parachutes. Um, anyway, we are going to launch the NZSS Avenger once again. If the reason ever not being just to get more money, because our space agency desperately needs it if we are to continue pushing the boundaries of science. But this one goes off without a hitch. These missions are very, very routine at this point. At long last, after a couple years on the surface of Duna, it is now time to finally bring the crew home aboard the NZSS Valentina, which has been waiting in orbit with half of its crew. And so we're bringing all of the astronauts out of the base here, alongside all of the ever-important data that we need to bring back to Kerbin for full analysis. Even the labs here do not have the full facilities to analyze every single sample that we gathered on the planet. But after everybody is boarded the DALV, it is now prepared for liftoff and to bring around the ending part of our illustrious mission to Duna after all these years finally coming to a close. On the final leg of their years-long journey, the re-entry of Kerbin begins, but Jebediah McLaughlin notices the ship's reaction wheels fighting to keep the ship oriented correctly. With perhaps only seconds to react, Jeb fires the RCS thrusters to attempt to straighten out the craft, but doesn't have the required force. The ship begins to tumble through the atmosphere, with Jeb and Svetlana desperately attempting to correct its flight path. All hope is lost when the ship separates at the command module bulkhead, dooming the rest of the crew to burn up on re-entry. Of the 8 astronauts sent to Duna, only 3 would return home safely. With the loss of Bill and Bob, Jebediah McLaughlin is now the only surviving member of the original 4 astronaut candidates selected in 1970. He decides that he's going to take some time off from the program to collect his thoughts. I wanted him to retire entirely as the nation fears losing its most veteran pilot, but he has refused to leave the program entirely. Classic Jebediah there is all that I can say. Meanwhile, we are making strides in trying to get to Eve, with both India and New Zealand having to delay their plans for the future exploration of Eve because of the difficulty of actually landing and returning from the surface. To rise to the challenge and to meet the new regulations pending the disaster on the DALV-2, our engineers have put together the Eve Glide and Return spaceplane. To prove the technology, we are first sending it on an uncrewed test flight.
A gray old house on